sunny Osoyoos, British Columbia. And the hotter it gets, the faster the snow will melt, and the more houses are getting flooded. Mm-hmm. And now I hand it over to Peter for the rest of the program and introductions.
Thank you, Ellie. And my name is Peter Denoy. I am in the Dominican Republic and glad to be here. And I'm very happy to see our speaker here. So I will introduce him after we've finished introduction of the rest of the attendees. I'm a member of the Rotary E-Club of Canada 1, and we'll be visiting Canada July and August after the convention in Toronto. So looking forward to a 2-month visit during the warm time of the summer in Alberta and British Columbia too. David.
Hello, I'm David Barrett, Treasurer of the Rotary Club of Canada 1, at least for another 6 weeks until Jean-Michel takes over. And I'm in Cochrane, Alberta.
Kitty, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Kitty Butchko, and I am the Charter President of Rotary E-Club of the Caribbean 7020. I am currently in Canada. I spend my winters in Anguilla in the Caribbean, and I'm a Rotarian who's been recently attending about 4 Rotary meetings every week. And I love being online with all my Rotary friends that I'm meeting all over the place. So thank you for allowing me to attend.
You're welcome anytime, Kitty. I'm trying to find a meeting where she's not going to be, and I don't know yet whether that's going to be happening. I see her on a regular basis, but then that's the fun of the virtual meetings. We can be anywhere all the time. Jean-Michel.
Yes, you hear me? Yes, I'm Jean-Michel Crepin. I'm on the charter member of the E-Club of Canada 1, and I'm involved with a Thursday 8 a.m. chat that with Kitty is often present and presents also very challenging ideas. Welcome to see you again, Kitty, and welcome to our presenter.
Thank you, Jean-Michel. John, how are you? John Kay, how are you?
I already did my introduction, Peter.
Oh.
Nobody wants to hear from me twice, for sure.
I don't think I have that first one recorded.
Oh, anyway, I'm here in Blaine, Washington, looking at Canada. I'm a director of the Club of Canada 1, and fortunately, we have no flooding, just gorgeous weather.
Thanks, John. Vicky.
Hi, I'm Vicky Horsfield. I have been a member of Rotary Club of Canada 1 for 2.5 years, and we have a thunderstorm and it's pouring rain because we're in the rainy season. So I'm not going to stay on here long because you can hear all my noise. I'm in Guatemala right now.
Thank you, Vicky. And we have a visitor, the Smart Panda.
Good evening. My name's Wade Coombs. I'm with the St. Thomas Railway City Rotary Club. I'm the current president of the club, and looking forward to my exit on stage left in about 6 weeks, which will be nice. Again, just checking out. We've been doing meetings through our for our club through Facebook Live for the past year, and we're looking at some different technologies to see what might make more sense to broaden our membership as far as the meeting attendance. And so Kitty invited me out to check out the e-meetings and see how they look. So far it looks fantastic. So thank you for having me out.
Awesome. Glad to have you. Are you planning on coming to Toronto to the convention?
I do not believe I'm going to be at a conference because I'm that weekend I'm actually at a horse show with my daughter. So
okay, but maybe somebody else from your club, because we have a breakout session for best practices for e-clubs that is being organized. So you may send somebody out there to attend for that too.
I do. I definitely have one club member that will be there for sure. Our Pastor Governor Diane Chantler will be up there representing our club, and
Good.
Hopefully we'll have a few other people up there as well. So
Fantastic.
We'll definitely check it out.
Thank you. Bruce, good evening.
My name is Bruce, and I'm in Surrey.
Okay, I think we are ready to start with the program. So last but not least, I'd like to introduce Matthew Rowe. And Matthew will be our speaker tonight. He has a very interesting history of what he has done. He has been a columnist. He has worked for the Parliament Hill and has held positions in the Senate, the Conference Board of Canada, worked for NGOs involved in international trade and developments. He has also been the official spokesman for the Monarchist League of Canada, appearing on TV and other media, and has served on many boards of charitable organizations as well. Since he joined the PCC in 2012, he worked on 4 royal tours and led the launch of initiatives as varied as the campaign for wool, partnerships in heritage regeneration, and most significantly, the creation of an Indigenous Languages Initiative. And his duties include oversight and development for all of the Prince of Wales's Canadian charitable initiatives, stakeholder management, and communications. And we're very glad to see him, and maybe he can let us know whether on Saturday he will be in the UK and participating in the royal wedding. Welcome, and you have the floor, sir.
Oh, thank you very much, Peter, and thank you for having me come to speak. I'll pop the bubble of suspense right away and say that unfortunately my invitation must have been lost in the mail because I won't be attending. But I think, like many of us, will be getting up rather early to watch it on television. But I did actually have the opportunity. We were over in March, taking a group of our donors to meet with His Royal Highness. And so one of the side programs was we got to go see where it was all going to happen. So we had a private tour of St. George's Chapel, as well as the state apartments where the reception will be. So I can feel like I was there, but unfortunately I won't be. I didn't make the cut for the main list. So I guess I can just dive into a little bit about what we do and what my role is, and then open it up for questions. I guess, is that how we'll proceed?
Yes, please, sir.
Excellent. So again, my name is Matthew Rowe. I'm a vice president with Princess Charities Canada. We're the Canadian charitable office for His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, and our function is to really help to expand and enhance His Royal Highness's different charitable activities here in Canada, and ensure that they're inspired by the same vision that he's had for all his charities over his charitable career of the last 42 years, but also to ensure that the initiatives that we run are rooted in the Canadian reality. We were the first country outside of the United Kingdom to have its own charitable office coordinating the Prince's work. The Prince has had stuff in Canada for about 35 years, but in the past, a lot of it was coordinated through London. About 7 years ago, we became the first to bring that sort of in-house, and as I say, with an eye to growing what already exists and then creating new initiatives rooted in his vision, but that connected to the reality of modern Canada. So I had a really unique experience because I was the first employee after our first president to be hired. And so I've watched the organization grow and expand and have been able to play a key role in many of the initiatives as getting them off the ground, as Peter has mentioned. Our focus here in Canada is threefold. So we have 3 primary initiatives. The first is our crown jewel, which is the Prince's Operation Entrepreneur. This program helps transitioning military personnel and veterans who want to start their own business. So we provide all the support that those leaving the armed forces or who have left the armed forces need to get a business off the ground. This was the first program of its kind in Canada. Generally, there's a lot of transition programs for those who want to work for someone else, get skills training, that sort of thing. But if you wanted to start a business, there was nothing there for you. So our program provides education, mentorship, and financing to help get a business off the ground. We run one-day seminars across the country to let people dip their toe in the water to see if entrepreneurship is right for them. And then we also run intensive residential boot camps where the participants are taught by business school professors. So it's like almost an MBA in a week. And they're also mentored by business students who help them translate in the evenings what they learn during the day into their business plan. And so they leave the boot camps with a draft business plan and their pitch, and then we provide aftercare support. So once their business is launched, providing webinars, support around pro bono legal services, marketing, all these sorts of things in terms of aftercare. So that's one, and since the program was started in 2012, we've helped 250 businesses be launched across Canada, and have helped over 1,000 individuals to test the waters on entrepreneurship. So that's one of the initiatives. The second is inspired by the Prince's charitable career in the United Kingdom, and is around helping young people, disadvantaged young people, to get connected to employment. And so this is really an outgrowth of one of the Prince's oldest charities, the Prince's Trust in the UK. And the idea has always been to give young people a hand up rather than a handout, to be able to pursue their dreams, whether it's in employment, in entrepreneurship, what have you. And so we run a program currently in Toronto, Halifax, Calgary, and Winnipeg. That again helps young people who have more barriers than usual to get that kind of first rung on the employment ladder. In those barriers can include socioeconomic, race, they can be Indigenous, newcomer Canadians, all these different factors. People who have a harder time than the average Canadian to access employment and get that first experience. So that's another important initiative. And then our third, again, is uniquely Canadian, is our Indigenous languages work. And I'm very proud of this one because it's one that I helped develop from scratch, and it's addressing the very real need faced by Indigenous peoples across the country, which is that all of the traditional languages are in decline. This is a direct impact of the residential school system that sort of broke that oral tradition. And so as a result, you have a gap of people who haven't learned their language as a first language, and many of these languages are dying out. It's especially bad in British Columbia. And some of you on the call were from BC. BC has half the languages in the country, but it's also the worst off because the groups are quite small, and many of them are already quite far done by. We also work with the three major languages that also have a very strong chance of survival. But again, even they need that extra boost. So that initiative has taken the form of, we've done children's books. So a lot of our program stuff is geared towards kids 3 to 8. Where the brain is at its spongiest and it's easiest to learn a language. So we do children's books that are written in the language in phonetics and in English. And the phonetics are important because, as I say, often the parents themselves don't speak the language. So it's a way to help teach them. There's also a digital version of all the books we produce where an elder reads to the kids, and so they can understand, hear the terms. And in some of the more complex languages, the digital version will actually include a video inset of the mouth, so you can see how they make certain sounds, because again, some of the languages are quite complicated, and the sounds don't necessarily exist in English, so you almost need to see how they're being made. So we've done that. We've done a pilot children's television program that's sort of a Sesame Street style puppet show that we did all in Plains Cree. And one of the more unique projects we did was supporting the National Inuit Organization, who is working to unify the written form of their language. Right now, there's 9 different ways of writing it. They're coming up with one standard written form. So we actually brought that committee to support their work on a study tour of Wales, which was a really interesting experience, taking this group of Inuit language experts around Wales to learn about how actually the Welsh have done a rare thing in the world of minority languages, which is to take a language that was in severe decline and create lots of new speakers. So they've actually done a very good job on that. So we were in Wales to learn about all the different factors that led to that, and ended off in a meeting with His Royal Highness at his Welsh house, which I won't try and pronounce. There's lots of consonants, but suffice it to say, it was a really interesting conversation. So those are our 3 major initiatives. We have a presence in every province and territory. As Peter mentioned, we've been involved in 3 royal tours, in 4, 3 by the Prince of Wales and the Duchess of Cornwall, and 1 with the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge, Will and Kate, when they came to BC and the Yukon. We did some work around languages with them. As a reference to the wedding, Prince Harry's also met some of our program participants when he was in Toronto for the Invictus Games. He met with members of our military entrepreneurship program to hear about transition and how the program helped them, a subject close to his heart, because of course him, like his brother and his father, all served in the armed forces and have an appreciation for both what goes into serving, but then also what comes after for many of their former teammates and the struggles that they often face. So that's on a high level the major work that we do. As Peter mentioned previously, we've had other pilot initiatives that continue to go on in Canada, even though we're sort of moving them out of the nest to stand on their own 2 feet. One of the quirkier and funner ones is the campaign for wool, which was, it seems light and fluffy. It's also good for puns, so I won't be sheepish about that. But it is all about promoting wool as a sustainable, renewable fiber. So it's actually got a really sort of solid message behind it, and was started by the Prince when he saw a decline in the global wool market and thought people should be getting excited about wool again. So we've done multiple wool weeks, including events in Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, and Vancouver. And there'll be another one again this year, although outside of our banner, running sort of on its own. Where we've actually partnered with the Royal Winter Fair in Toronto to be the home of the campaign for wool going forward. So that's one of them. There's prizes for youth service that we deliver in partnership with We Day. There's prizes for sustainable forestry, for heritage regeneration. The Prince touches a lot of different areas, but as I say, the main focus is on those 3 programs. So military entrepreneurship, helping disadvantaged young people get jobs, and revitalizing Indigenous languages. So maybe I'll pause for a second and see if that's generated any questions, or see how I can tell you a little bit more about what we do.
Anybody, any questions for Matthew?
I'd like to hear your sheep jokes again. You went through those so fast I didn't catch them.
I can spin a yarn for you. I mean, again, it's one of those initiatives where I regret that we're not going to be able to do it in the office on a regular basis, because it did make quite a lot of jokes. You know, it's a soft touch initiative. You know, you can go on and on and on, but it's one of the. It was a lot of fun. You know, we have all these very heavy, serious social initiatives, but that was one where, you know, I got to, one of the fun things we did with the campaign was we did an installation of live sheep at the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto. So for those of you familiar with Toronto and where the ROM is on Bloor Street there at Avenue Road, the big plaza in front of the Crystal, we set up a huge sheep pen, and then for 3 days over the weekend had these sheep living there, and then an exhibition inside the ROM on the wonders of wool. So what other job can you be, you know, helping young people to get a job in the morning, and then opening a pen of sheep on Bloor Street in the afternoon. So
So I have a question in regards to the financial aspect of your of the charity. Is there a set budget? Is there monies available for the different segments? How does that work?
Yeah, so we're not an endowed foundation. A lot of people think that, you know, just pawn one of the crown jewels and that's what we're living off of, which is not the case. So the prince does put his own money into it, so that is important. And we do receive an operating grant every year from his charitable foundation, which funds his charities, as another layer. But overall, we fundraise for the initiatives that we have, and so we're very fortunate to have a strong group of supporters all across Canada, both from the corporate sector, from government, and also from individuals. And we actually rely quite heavily on individual donors to underwrite a lot of what we do. But our overall budget in Canada is about $2.5 million. And we've got a staff of 13. So not too bad, but again, compared to some of the other Princess charities, we're actually quite small when you compare us to, for example, the Princess Trust, the oldest charity in the UK. They're I think they're about 80 million a year. No, 60 million pounds a year. 60 to 80 million pounds, depending on the year. And they have 1,300 staff. So like they're massive. So we do a lot with less, but we are in growth mode. So each of the three initiatives I mentioned are expanding, but yeah, about $2.5 million a year, and a range of supporters from kind of all those buckets.
I have a question about your Indigenous language books. You mentioned ages 3 to 8. Are those books that are specially written for those children, or are they books that are translated into the languages from something else?
Yeah, no, very good question. They're specially developed. So they actually deal with Indigenous themes and subject matter, incorporating legends and characters and elements that would be familiar to kids from that background. So yeah, no, it's not a straight translation. And in fact, with many of the languages, it's very difficult to do a straight translation because also it's very time consuming, but also the stories, because of the nature of the languages, the essence of the story doesn't necessarily translate well. So we always at the outset work to create stories that are going to make sense first from the Indigenous perspective, but they'll also have an English translation. So we did do one recently when His Royal Highness was in Nunavut in June as part of the Canada 150 celebrations. We unveiled a special Inuktitut book that we based on a children's book that he wrote called The Old Man of Loch Nagar, that he wrote back in the early 80s. It was a story he used to tell the Princes Andrew and Edward when they were young, so his brothers. And so we actually adapted that story. We indigenized it, moved the setting from Scotland to Nunavut, changed the characters to reflect Inuit mythology rather than Scottish. The core story is the same, but all the elements and the images all changed to make it appropriate for the kids in Iqaluit. And so we called it The Old Man of Pangner Tongue, which is a town in Nunavut. And so we recently actually provided copies of that book to every K to grade 3 student in the territory, which was a great legacy of the tour. But yeah, generally it's original content written specifically for the community that we're working with.
Okay, David, anything else?
Matthew, how many books would how many different languages would or how many books do you have to print for all these different languages?
It varies community to community. So some of the bigger languages like Inuktitut, like Cree, like Ojibwe, they can be used across broad swaths of Canada and multiple communities. Some of the other ones that we're working on, we're literally dealing with like one community or one very small part of the country. So the number of books we print varies according to the communities that we're working in, to meet those particular needs. So for example, in Saskatchewan, we've just done a project where we did books in 8 languages, so 3 dialects of Cree. That was the most copies for the Cree books, but then also in Sultu, Dene, Nakota, Lakota, and Dakota, and those last 3 are very, very small groups. So they're often really small print runs, which is another reason why this area has been neglected in the past, because for a commercial publisher, it's not worthwhile to print like 30 books for a community. You're not going to make money that way, but it's important for us to be able to provide that content to help to teach the kids, so we can create these young speakers. Yeah.
It wasn't so much the print runs, but the number of different ones that you had to print.
Yes, yeah. So in the project that we're just doing now in Saskatchewan, so we did 5 books in each of 8 languages, so 45 different books in total. We also have a really neat project that we're doing with the Winnipeg Children's Foundation, or it's Manitoba Children's Hospital Foundation, which deals with both the Winnipeg Children's Hospital as well as the hospital in Churchill. And it's books that are specifically designed for kids that are receiving treatment. So the majority of the kids actually at the Winnipeg Children's Hospital are Indigenous, and of those, the majority are from outside of Winnipeg. So obviously, you know, it's often their first trip outside of their community. It can be very alienating. So we have books that deal with that issue, that deal with issues that are very common amongst Indigenous kids. So issues like diabetes. We have a book on pain, which is actually a really interesting one, because in many Indigenous cultures, it's almost taboo to talk about pain, which can be very difficult if you're a doctor trying to treat someone and they're sort of culturally just not explaining if they're in pain or not. So one of the books deals with like creating a pain scale and that sort of thing. And so those books in a way that kids will understand. And so those books are distributed to the kids by their pediatrician. So every time they go to an appointment, they get a new book. And so that we have 5 books in each of 4 languages for that project. But yeah, it varies across the country. I think overall we've done 12 different languages and looking to add, but there's about, again, depending on whose figures you look at, there's 65 to 80 languages in the country. So we still have a ways to go.
Thank you.
So, and there is no question, obviously, a book is a book, and it has its value it's invaluable for children and anybody to use. However, we're moving ahead to a different world with the digital component for that matter too. Mm-hmm. And I think here with the digital part, it may be easier to using that to expand what you're trying to do and maybe make it easier and not having to print. Are you looking at that all as a possibility too?
Yes, yeah. So all of the books we produce have a digital version and can be launched through a free app called Erasma. And the way it works is that all the books are uploaded to it, and it can be launched with the app just by scanning even a picture of the book cover. You actually don't even need the physical book. You just need an image of the cover, and it'll launch it. And you can also access it separately through a library. But yeah, it can be it's all digital, read by an elder, and then, as I say, some of them have a video inset of the mouth. Additionally, we've been producing video content. So as I said, we did the pilot children's television program. We're hoping to get funding to do some more episodes of that, but maybe I'll send you the link for you to share with the group, because it's a really fun program. Again, set up sort of like Sesame Street, but it's all in Cree, in Plains Cree, and we use local actors and kids from the community that we worked in, and so sometimes the oral component is easier to reproduce and to learn from, remembering that most of these languages only developed writing systems in the last 50 to 100 years. So reading is almost like a next level thing with the majority. What we really want to get at is oral fluency. And so that's why we're looking at different and creative ways to do that.
Matthew, is there any commonality in the written language? I mean, I know in the spoken language, it's completely different, but is there, like in Chinese, there's dozens of different dialects that are totally unintelligible, one or the other, but the written language is all the same.
Yes.
Is that any of that in the?
Well, so interestingly, the only one indigenous group in the country had their own written language before contact, and that was the Mi'kmaq in the East Coast. And no one really understands why. They're a bit of a mystery. But the rest of them, again, all their writing systems would have been imposed. So a lot of times when we think of as the writing system, we associate, like with Inuktitut, you've got all the sort of funny looking symbols, and people assume that is actually their written language, but it's not. It was invented by a missionary. And many of the other writing systems, again, all of them for one form or another were imposed by contact. With what many of the communities are trying to do now is to try and do just what you say, to come up with a standard written form, because again, these have all evolved often in isolation. The most dramatic example of that is the Inuit, because the Inuit met sort of Europeans, different parts of the Arctic met Europeans at different points. So the result is, depending on who they met in where, from Labrador to northern Quebec to Nunavut, Northwest Territories, and a bit of the Yukon, they often all got different writing systems. So even though with the dialects, you could actually, if you were talking on the phone from one end of the Arctic to the other, you could understand each other. But if you were to write an email, it would be unintelligible because it's a totally different writing system. So that's what they're engaged in right now, is this process of coming up with kind of a unified written form that will incorporate the dialects, but then will make it easier for them to communicate. Because to give it, again, a sense of scale, Inuktitut is the most successful of the languages, and it's only about 30,000 speakers, 35,000 speakers. So again, and that starts to drop off pretty dramatically. Like with some of the BC languages, you're dealing with like a handful of people that maybe still have fluency. So in that case, it becomes more about preservation and establishing a good archive than actually keeping the language alive, because in some cases they're too far gone. So we want to ensure that for the larger languages that they don't get to that point, and then for the languages that are much more endangered, that you're able to create an archive of material that could support a future effort. Because even if a language is dead completely, there's no first generation speakers left, as long as you have a good archive of written and recordings and that sort of thing, there is always the possibility you can bring it back. And the most successful example of that in modern history is Hebrew, and the revitalization of modern Hebrew, because that was a completely dead language. It hadn't actually been used as a lingua franca for about 1600 years, I think. And it existed in text. It was a religious, it was, if you were a rabbi, you learned it to read the Torahs, but you didn't actually speak it. And so it wasn't until the 19th century that there was this effort to revitalize the language to be a common tongue for Jews returning to Israel. And then with the creation of the state of Israel, then it became this big example. So you go from being a totally dead language to 9 million speakers. So that's an extreme example of revitalization. But in a lot of other efforts, even in places like Hawaii, in New Zealand, where the language didn't totally die, having a strong archive was very important for keeping them alive. So that's what we're hoping to do with those more minority languages.
Okay, thank you very much, Matthew. And I'd like to ask David to thank our speaker for tonight, please.
Yes, Peter, it's my pleasure to thank Matthew for his presentation this evening. I'm amazed at the range of programs that your trust is doing, and going from the entrepreneurs to indigenous languages and wool. Your books and languages alone must be a very large program, all these different languages, and trying to put those books together. Your bit about the Welsh language is a little bit close to home to me, growing up in Britain in the 50s, and on the border of Wales, and Welsh was being it was dying, I guess, but there was no real enthusiasm to keep it alive. And now I go back and visit relatives, and my family's married into a Welsh family, Welsh speaking, and the 2- and 3-year-olds, they're babbling away in a mixture of Welsh and English, and just expecting me to understand it all.
Yeah.
So, but Welsh is certainly alive and flourishing. So if you can do the same with the indigenous languages in Canada, or at least some of them, I really applaud you for doing that. And thank you very much for taking the time and coming and address our members here, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and for it's always a pleasure to speak to such an illustrious group from around the world. And I just wanted to end with one little anecdote on the Welsh language trip. We actually visited a daycare that was a Welsh language daycare in a part of Cardiff where they said that they hadn't heard from that they never would have expected that there would be a Welsh language school there, but it was to your point about how it's been revitalized. And anyways, one of the, as you know, it's a very quirky language. It sounds quite funny when they're speaking, and I discovered that, to much to my amusement, that the Welsh word for microwave is called poppity ping. And then I asked them, I was like, well, what's the Welsh word for popcorn? And they said popcorn. So I said, so are you telling me that the Welsh word for microwave popcorn is popcorn poppity ping? And they're like, yes, it would be. So anyways.
So I just had that one on the most recent trip, this poppity ping, but really interesting.
Yeah.
But my little bit of Welsh is Yaki da. Cheers.
Yeah, cheers.
Matthew, again, thank you very much. And yeah, just email me the link to that video, or you know, whatever interesting things you have, because we'll include that in the reporting of today's meeting and in the bulletin, so we can share that with our members. Again, thank you very much, and it was a pleasure having you with us.
Good night.
Thank you, Matthew. Very interesting. I'd like to learn more about it. Yeah.
I'll send you all the websites so you can see more about the programs.
Yep. Thank you, sir.
Don't hesitate to get in touch if you have further questions.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye. Ellie, back to you.
Well, we have time to chat and make this a real fellowship assembly. And I think we'll open it up for any of our participants to talk about what they'd like to talk about. And we just had Nosberto join us, so maybe we should have him introduce himself. Nosberto is a regular. And I see in the background that John Kay seems to have a wife also.
I do.
Sorry.
Sorry about that.
Let there be no mistake.
Nosberto, would you introduce yourself for those that don't know you?
It needs to be unmuted.
I'll unmute you. Go ahead. Go ahead, Norberto.
Oh, thank you very much. Hi, how are you? I'm Nosberto Lu from Guatemala, but actually I'm here in Detroit. I'm a little kind of stranded because our plane is delayed. We are on our way to to Montreal and then to Ottawa. So nice to be with you, a little late, but thank you very much for preceding me. Thank you.
Well, better late than never. You know that.
Better late than never. Yeah. Thank you. So
does anybody have anything that they would like to share with us?
I just wanted to tell Nosberto that I'm going to Montreal in June, so we should hook up. We'll have a pod meeting.
Are you going to the convention?
No, I'm not. I'm going to a wedding and my daughter's birthday.
Oh.
So I'm not able to.
Are you combining a time to do some presentations?
I am. I'm going to 3 Rotary clubs that have helped us out with water filters and stoves for our families. So I'm going to do presentations at their clubs.
Great. And how is your project going right now? How many students do you have involved? Vicki?
Are you talking to me, Elliot? The internet connection's not very good. Could you repeat?
How's your program going, and how many students do you have enrolled?
We have 40 sponsored students this year. For the first time, we started a preschool. So we've got 8 kids in a preschool, which is really fun and exciting. We have an absolutely fantastic preschool teacher. And for the first time ever, we have more kids in junior high and high school than we have in primary school. So that's encouraging because the statistics are really poor for people getting even to high school, much less getting out. And the kids are all doing really well and their marks are good. We have a fabulous math teacher, so she's really lifted up their math marks, and the kids are just blossoming. It's so much fun to watch. I feel so privileged to be able to be a part of it.
Nice. Are your teachers all local?
No, the teachers are mostly volunteers, except for the woman, no, I should say that. The woman who's in charge of our homework program and our reading program is local, and the preschool teacher is also local.
Nice.
But the math teacher's a volunteer from the States, and English teachers, we get them from all over for a long-term and short-term. A fellow from San Francisco, I told you in my message, has been here for 2.5 months, and he's leaving on Thursday, which is hard to say goodbye.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, it's very close to my heart, these type of projects, you know, with the project we're involved in. It's there's some similarities there. I wish we had an opportunity.
Yeah.
Come and visit us one day in Mexico.
Yeah, and likewise, you come to Guatemala.
Yeah, it's on the wish list, on the bucket list.
Well, I have a spare room for visitors, so
really?
You're welcome anytime. Yeah. So you just have to pay for your airfare.
How long have you been in Guatemala, Vicki?
Coming up to 6 years.
Ooh, and what took you there in the first place?
I came to go to language school to improve my Spanish. And when I arrived, I knew I was home. So I went back to Canada and retired and packed up my life, said goodbye to my adult children, and came here. And I worked for a couple of other organizations and then started this one with a young Guatemalan man just 4 years ago.
Do your children come and visit?
My sons come twice and my daughters come once.
How old are they?
My son's 33 and my daughter's going to be 31. Yeah. But I have the wonderful blessing, thank you God, of being able to fly standby. So it's easier for mom to go visit the kids than for the kids to come visit mom. So I go there more often than they come here. But I always tie that in with other things, you know, fundraising and Rotary talks and visiting other Rotary clubs and visiting friends. So,
great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Vicki, you spoke about the teachers. So these retired people, like the person from California, is that retired teacher that's coming down there and spending 2 months with you?
This particular fellow has taken a 6-month sabbatical, and so he was looking for a place. He's a English as a second language teacher at a community college, and so he wanted to try his hand at teaching kids. He was awesome. So we get them from some very interesting quarters, and so we've had quite a variety of English teachers, which is really good for the kids because it really opens up their world, because you know everybody brings their own interests and cultures and background, and so you know, in our village, these kids don't venture very far. They maybe sometimes go to the touristy town that's about half an hour away, but they don't get exposure to foreigners very often. And so, you know, the goal is to bring lots of different people to bring the world to them. So, David, if you want to come and teach English, we're always looking for English teachers.
Welsh.
Welsh, yeah, you could teach them Welsh too.
Teach Welsh.
It was interesting that this fellow's talk about developing books in the Inuit or other indigenous languages, because, you know, in Guatemala, there's 23 different Mayan dialects. Wow. And that's one of the things there that people here are working very hard at, is to keep their language going, because, you know, Spanish was imposed on them, and the kids have to have their schooling in Spanish, but they also get their native Mayan language as kind of a second language class. But, you know, the older generation is working very hard at making sure that the younger kids still speak their language. But it would be interesting to see if there's some commonalities between Indigenous languages in Canada and here.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Do the kids just learn to read, or do they write in their native language? Is that
they write in it. They write in it also. Now, I don't know if that was a written form that was imposed on them, or if it has always existed. I don't know the answer to that. But they learn to write it as well as speak it.
It seems that about half the world is trying to preserve all these different native languages, and the other half of the world is trying to get to one language.
Yeah. And then you look at English, how it keeps evolving. You know, sometimes when I hear what younger people say or how they write things in a text, I think, this isn't my language. I don't understand this.
When I go back to Holland, sometimes what are they talking about? And they throw so many. I listen to the Dutch radio every morning, and half of the world have been Englishized. It's like, that's not a Dutch word. They just, the craziest words, yeah.
Well, email has certainly led that along quite a bit.
Yes.
People are communicating in email and trying to find a common language.
Well, thank you, Vicky. It was nice to hear a little bit more about your project. For those of us that haven't yet, I knew already a little bit about it. But is there anybody else that would like to share? David, would you like to share a little bit about your trip?
Well, as I was mentioning, we were in Wales because my niece married into a Welsh family, and her husband's Welsh speaking, and so now the children are Welsh speaking as well. And they're farming and they own a pub and various entrepreneurial things. So I also went to 2 Rotary meetings while I was there, my late brother's club, and it's really nice to be welcomed there. And I'm going to write a greeter message about one of the things they're doing. They've got a program called Rota Kids, and they're starting with really young children and getting them. One of the programs that RIBI, Rotary Britain and Ireland, have done is crocus. I guess they're selling the crocus bulbs, but the money's going for end polio. And that's been very big right throughout Britain. So they're giving these kids, school kids, to plant them in common ground and around the schools. And then we went from there to spend 2 weeks in Provence. And we had a week near Nice in a chalet, and then another week near Arles, Avignon area. We like self-catering because we love going around the markets and interacting with, for us, very limited French, and interacting with the people, particularly in the markets, is always lots of fun. And we had a great time there. But I also enjoy renting cars, particularly in France. We had a Peugeot, now Jean-Michel told me how to pronounce this, 3008. a 3008 six-speed Peugeot. So I had lots of fun driving that. Well, I had some fun in Britain as well. One of my sister-in-law's neighbours, he took me out on his Porsche, and we didn't go over 230 clicks in that.
Wow.
That's kilometers or miles?
No, 140 miles an hour, yeah.
Wow.
So, anyway, it was fun 4 weeks. And then there's a Air Transat do direct flights from Nice direct to Montreal. So we flew from here to London, and then took EasyJet from London to Nice, and then came back through Montreal. So saves a little bit of traipsing around Europe, and really good flights. It was interesting when we were listening. There's a English language radio station in Radio Riviera in Monaco, and one day they were actually advertising Air Transat. So they were encouraging people in Provence to fly to Quebec, I guess, for holidays. So that was a holiday.
Thank you for sharing, David. I'm sending a message to Peter at the same time. We have 8 minutes left, but we don't have to. I can go and start cooking, but I was thinking
one of the things Matthew was saying about the word for the microwave, and one of the well-known ones in TV they call telly-welly. So they adapted English words as, products that there was never a Welsh name for it in the old days, so they've adapted it. But how they come up with microwave is a little strange.
Yeah, Ali, I agree, but there's nothing wrong. We can bring that up because one thing is that we want to let you know that both of us are stepping down from the organizing of the fellowship assemblies. I will be remain in the background, be active with Zoom and set up the meetings and that kind of thing. And I'm also one to, and I've always done that. You go and visit other clubs and find speakers and topics and stuff like that. But again, with so many other things, we have to move forward with Ellie's position and with the convention coming up, and I will be involved with that too. Plus, expanding on the international or inter-e-club organization as it's happening. Be spending more time on that too, because I find that because we've been going out there and communicating with other clubs, we get people to come and visit our club, but in the end may be beneficial because they hopefully will make a donation as they come, and so David has been responding to that, reporting on that as well. So but like with so many other things, some other people will have to step up and start working on that too. So
we don't have any plans yet for June. We've been waiting for the board to decide if they want to have a changeover, and we haven't heard anything yet. So Peter and I are not planning anything. And then after July 1st, we have no plans. But, having this last portion of our meeting kind of as what it initially was intended, a fellowship assembly, like a coffee chat. If that's what our members like to do, and it doesn't have to be an hour. It could be half an hour or as long, and just share with each other. And I enjoy hearing from Vicky about her project, and maybe we can have other guests. We would have to set some guidelines. What is the project, pushing for projects or anything, but
no politics.
No politics, no religion, And
No, and we could combine it also with what we talked about, and I talked about that in my presentation to the other e-clubs assembly in the United States, and that is to have different coffee chats or chats throughout the week, months, and different times, and different days, and different drinks. Not always coffee. We got to have something else too, like wine or scotch, or have a theme or not a theme. It doesn't matter. But I think the fellowship aspect of that is what everybody talks about. That we need to keep that going, and that is, because yes, we have. And there's nothing wrong with once in a while having a program with a lot of stuff in it. But this kind of stuff, and the same as the coffee sips that we have, we got lots of fun. It's a good thing we don't record the coffee sips, by the way.
Well, I'd like to say that I really like that idea, because I like going to the coffee chat, but oftentimes, especially with time changes of the year, it's harder for me to go to those in the morning. And it would be fun to have them at different times of the week. And like you say, Peter, we bring some different, something different to imbibe. So it's
different
has a different
beverage.
feel.
Yeah. No, but we have the Europeans, don't make it to this meeting because it's midnight or later, wherever they are. And we're gonna see more of that too. And I know other clubs struggle with it the same way, but that's fine. We can still, learn from that, but still do our own thing also.
See, to make it easier, and so we don't have to do the organizing and the arranging for speakers, is to set up a link, the same as you have the coffee chat, and every third Tuesday of the month, whoever wants to come and join in, and sometimes maybe we have maybe we do a classification talk or something, but I like that idea.
Yeah, and that's one thing to do is it'd be one permanent link, and we can use the coffee sip or whatever link. That's what a lot of other clubs have for their international, their open meetings. There's just one link, and you can put that on the website, and that's the easy part, to have.
So maybe we could just call the link fellowship link, and anytime and whatever. Okay, yeah, we can talk about that. Well,
and that's just a matter of doing it at one time and noticing it. And the other thing is that people say, well, I don't know. There's certain things that when you're a member of an e-club that you have to do differently than what you have done so far. And one thing is a calendar. And anybody and everybody can use a Google Calendar, and it puts it into the time zone that you are, and it sends you notification that you have. People have to get used to do that, and that will make it easy to go at a different time and a different, day and that kind of stuff too. But those are responsibilities of being an e-club member, is know your time zones, know when it's what time where, and again, there's all kinds of good sites that can help you with all that too. So no excuses for that. We still get confused, and we always do, but those are some of the things that e-club members have to start doing, I think.
Right. Well, thank you, Peter. I think we're we never stop. We keep on trying new things. If there's no other further comments, or David, did you want to make another comment before I close, before I leave?
Thank you for having another excellent meeting on a Tuesday night. I don't even know what day it is. I have to apologize. My grandson was in and back and forth, so that's why I was.
Oh yeah, it's a family of Rotary we talk about all the time.
Absolutely, yeah.
And maybe one day we get to meet John's wife. And
bring her out of the background.
And Jean-Michel's wife.
No, but hopefully, maybe when when we are in August in Vancouver area, we talk about the pod then. Yeah. When Ileana and I are there, then John should be able to come up too. I think he was planning on doing that too. So hopefully he'll bring his wife.
maybe
Maybe
can
she has
handle
no passport. I don't know.
Let's
Oh,
see.
well, see you all. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Good
Thanks
night,
for coming,
everybody.
Good
everybody.
night, everybody.
Good
Take
night.
care.
Good night. Thanks to
Great
Wade.
night.
Thanks to Wade for arriving, spending the time.
It was my
Let me
pleasure
know,
to join.
Wade. Yep. If you have any questions, feel free
Will
to
do.
ask, Wade. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Good night, Wade.
Thanks
Take
for
care.
joining us, Wade.